On September 22, 1862, Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring all slaves held in the rebellious states to be then, thenceforward, and forever free. Though it was effective as of January 1, 1863, word was slow to reach the southern states.
2 weeks prior to the reading of the Emancipation Proclamation, the U.S. General marched into town and recruited slaves that were going to actually be a part of the ceremonial services at the formal reading of the proclamation. So 2 weeks prior to actually May 20th, slaves had already gotten whispers that, hey, we're about to be freed. They heard this drum rumblings of the general approaching, and so they took what they heard from them and took the drums from them and fused together, the beats that they heard in church or in their song and dance to create this custom revolutionary beat to celebrate at the May 20th Emancipation celebration.
The Freedom Drum Project is meant to make sure we never lose some intricate history to Tallahassee. Now, when Brigadier General McCook marched into Tallahassee over here at the Knott House Museum, his soldiers, of course, had drums as they played in. They read the Emancipation Proclamation and the slaves were freed from there. But they played an intricate drum beat as they came in, and when they left, they actually left those slaves with their original drums. The slaves didn't even believe it initially, okay? Until about 2 years later, they really realized that they were truly free. And then they began to commemorate this Day of Freedom, the Day of Freedom Cried, on May 20th every year by playing a particular drum beat.
It became a beat that was vanguarded by these 4 families, the Hill family, Johnson, Williams, and Colson family. And so today we're actually learning this folk drum beat from the Hill family, who has preserved it.
The drums were passed down to myself and to these fellows here. And their parents and their ancestors were descendants of slaves in Florida. And so every 20th of May, we celebrate beating the drums.
The young men of the families would go and gather with the grandfathers, and they would sit under them and learn the beat. And until the grandfather gave them a yay or nay whether or not you were playing the beat appropriately and right, determined whether or not you moved on to the next drum. So you learned out playing on bass drum, and then you moved to the snare drum. So largely what they would do is you learn the bass drum beat for one summer, and then, well, Pa, can I learn the snare? Well, come back to me next year and you'll learn the snare drum beat. So it kept them, interested and kept them out of trouble. Musically, what this beat is actually soul. It's rhythm. There's a certain part of this beat that you can't even capture in music, which is why it's been vanguarded so heavily and passed down through oral tradition or through what we call rote drumming, or it's interpretive. You play what I play in answer and call back and forth. And it's been because they didn't want to lose that original interpretation of the drum patterns and the beat, where they actually place the accents and things like that. But I mean, writing the beat, it's pretty basic. It's simple, forward. Every music is based off of your common 8th notes, 16th notes, and quarter notes, and that's so it's just a rhythmic exercise. But it's the interpretive language that goes behind it, learning the culture, learning how to add the soul and make the cadence sing and talk that you can't write.
Our goal here at the Raleigh House is to make sure that we're able to not have that beat be forgotten and preserve it. The last remaining folks who are playing that beat are upwards of 80 plus years old. And we're in a definite state of possibly losing that. So we want to make sure that beat in its original form is preserved for years and years and years to come. So our project is meant to take our professional drummers, those direct descendants, have them teach our young apprentices, all right, and have them continue it in perpetuity. Anyone who was willing to pick up a drum and learn how to do this to preserve it, that's who we were interested in bringing in, but particularly the youth, because they're the ones who will be able to continue this beat going on for years to come.
There's just so much with the May 20th, the Freedom Beat. That's an actual beat that was started when during the Emancipation, when Florida was emancipated on May 20th, and to see the young people here now carrying that on. So that's going to continue to go. It's not just a rattling of the drum. There's a significance to the beat. The unit that we're representing with the John G. Riley Museum of African American History and Culture and our partnership with the museum, we look at it as something that's going to reverberate and keep going because a lot of the history that we portray, a lot of the history that we display and structure is not in our history books. And sometimes if it is, it's glossed over to the point where that gives us another drive to really want to get that history out. We reenact the past in hope of shaping the future.
Beyond just preserving the beat amongst the community, we want to make sure that this is preserved within the state. So we've actually been able to score the original beat, and we'll have it held in the state archives to make sure that this is never ever forgotten and the history along with it. But beyond that, we want to inspire the youth to remember exactly, the things that transpired in the past, such that we can make sure that they never happen again. We never want these beats to be forgotten. I think it was Marcus Garvey that said, "A nation without the history of their past is like a tree without roots." So essentially, I think it's important that students and these children understand the roots of the Tallahassee community, that drum beat, the importance of it, and preserve it and inspire themselves to want to go ahead and create their own lanes in these avenues as well.
It's more than just music. It's living culture, it's living history, it's extending our present sense into our ancient past.
The Freedom Drum Project was established to teach the drum patterns to a new generation and preserve this important piece of history for the Tallahassee community for generations to come.
From east to west, from north to south, the sky is written all over. Liberty now and never. To arms, fight. Remember Denmark Massey of Charleston. Remember Nat Turner of Southampton. Remember Shields, Green, and Copeland, who fell and died as glorious martyrs for the cause of the slave. Remember that in a contest of oppression, the Almighty has no attributes for those of the oppressors. We're here today in celebration of the Emancipation Proclamation in the state of Florida on May 20th of 1863. A long time coming, 2.5 years nearly, when the Emancipation was signed by Abraham Lincoln on January 1 of 1863. The uniformed soldiers that you see, that last poem was by Frederick Douglass, a noted orator and a noted abolitionist, calling African American men to arms to fight for the Union. In May 23 of 1863, General Order number 143 allowed African Americans to fight for the Union. A great attribute to the Union fight, a Union cause, which caused the Union to win the Civil War battle. The Civil War battle in the Emancipation Proclamation could not have been signed or enacted without it being what it was, a war document for the Union. And to have a war, you had to have an adversary. The adversary was the Confederate Army. So on January 1, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was enacted and read at the 11 states that seceded from the Union. June 19th was the last state of Texas, was the last state in rebellion of the Emancipation Proclamation by General Granger as he rode into Galveston, Texas, and read the Emancipation Proclamation on June 19th in Texas, while the country throughout celebrates June 19th, the freeing of all American slaves in the United States. But to stick a pin in it, we must remember that there were still African Americans being held in slavery. Delaware and Kentucky did not abolish their slavery until the 13th Amendment of December 6th of 1865. And Oklahoma and some territories there also. So let's stick a pin in that. But the Emancipation Proclamation was read at the Knott House in Tallahassee on May 20th of 1865, freeing all slaves in the state of Florida. It was a well-anticipated document that finally reached here. And there are celebrations now of the Emancipation Proclamation because, of course, when African Americans found out they were free, they celebrated. So we stand here today representing the over 209,000 African Americans that fought during the Civil War, that wore the uniform as you see me and the soldiers standing here today. We represent them. We represent them, those that fought and those some gave it all. But there was a poem that was written to dignify and show what these soldiers were, the fight that they had, and the sacrifices that they made. It was a poem written by Paul Laurence Dunbar, a native Floridian. It was called The Soldier's Prayer, and it represented the African Americans that fought during the Civil War. It said, the muse were mine, if the muse were mine, and my feeble tongue was strong, I'd sing a stirring song. I'd sing a song heroic of the noble sons of Ham, those gallant colored soldiers who fought for Uncle Sam. In the early days, you scorned them, and with a mini flip of flout, you said these battles the white man and the whites would fight them out. Up the hills you fought and you faltered. In the valleys you strove and you bled. See your ears, they heard the thunder of the foe's approaching thread. When distress fell upon the nation, and the flag was drooping low, should dust pollute the banner? No, the nation shouted no. And war in its savage triumph spread abroad its funeral pall. You called on the colored soldiers, and they answered to your call. Like hounds unleashed and eager, and the lifeblood of the prey, sprang them forth and bore them bravely in the thickest of the fray. Where the fight was the hottest, and the bullets fastest fell, they pressed unbranched and fearless at the very mouth of hell. Or they rallied to the standard to uphold it by their might. None were stronger in their labor, none were braver in the fight. From the blazing breach of Wagner to the plains of Olustee, they were foremost in the fight of the battle to be free. And at Fort Pillar, God have mercy on the deeds committed there. To the souls of those poor victims sent thee without a prayer, that the fullness of thy pity and the hard-worth spirit sway of those gallant colored soldiers who fell fighting that day. Yes, the blacks, they've earned their freedom, and we've earned it dearly too, for the lifeblood of the thousands that these southern fields bedew. In the darkness of their bondage, in the depths of slavery's nights, their muskets flashed a dawning, and they fought their way to light. They were citizens and soldiers. When rebellion raised its head, those traits that raised them worthy then, no, those virtues, they're not dead. They slept, they marched, they suffered. Beneath the same dark skies as you, they faced a fierce foeman and remained brave and true. Their deeds shall find their record in the registry of fame. Their blood has cleansed completely every blot of slavery's shame. So all honor and all glory to those noble sons of Ham, those gallant colored soldiers who fought, and died for Uncle Sam. This is why we will not, we shall not, we cannot, and we must not forget these battlefields that were saturated with the blood of African American manhood. So we, as the 2nd Infantry Regiment, United States Colored Troop, Living History Association, and the John Gilmore Riley Museum of African American History and Culture will always remember May 20th as a significant date in the state of Florida, when African Americans heard that ring of freedom, freedom, freedom. Drums were played, picnics were happening, fireworks were going off, muskets were fired. So, in celebration of freedom for those of us in the state of Florida. It took a while to get here, but when it did, there was jubilation. May 20th is a day that we celebrate today, and we will celebrate henceforth and forever. Aim. Fire.